How you doing? I know you are. You guys are amazing. Amazing people. Okay, so if I can get you to come back to your seats right away, that'd be great, just so you're not disturbing the people now. I know the breaks are a little short. We're going to have a nice long dinner. We'll be fine, but not until we have this amazing trainer who's coming up right now. Are you ready? Yeah. No, you're not ready. Are you ready? Yeah. All right, you're starting to get there. This is worth it. This is worth it. So, our next trainer has been one of the top business and personal success speakers in the entire world. Entire what? He's given talks and seminars in every major city in the United States and Canada and over 45 different countries. He's the guru of gurus. Each year he speaks to over 250,000 people, and he's done that for years and years and years and years. He actually has one of the most successful product sales companies in the world. I don't know how many distributors he has. How many?
We put about $500 million worth.
Each, what, in total?
No, in total,
yeah. Almost $500 million in sales and products alone. Good or good? More than anyone else in the world. He has, if not the number one of the number one audio cassettes sales venues in history with Nightingale Conant, right? Yeah, if not number one, then close to it. He has started, built, or managed and turned around over 22 different businesses in the last 25 years. He's worked with over 1,000 different companies who all have his videos and cassettes for all of their people in 42 different countries, every major company you can imagine. He has written 45 books. Every year he writes 4 books. This year alone, he's releasing 8 books. Now, that's nothing short of incredible. That's what? Twice as loud. That's incredible. I might write 8 chapters in 2 years, okay? Just totally incredible. And he's a brilliant man. He's very, very, very smart. He doesn't usually put that on his bio or whatever, but I know him, and I know people who know him, and everybody who really knows him says the same thing about this gentleman. He's one of the most brilliant men on the planet. He's at another level than most people when it comes to intelligence and just really understanding the breakdown of things, the breakdown of success. And many of you have heard his voice for years and years and years on his products. He is one of the gurus of gurus. He's a great friend. He's very loyal. He's got a heart of gold. I am thrilled to have with us at the seminar of the century, Mr. Brian Tracy!
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Please sit down. No. Thank you. Thank you. Please sit down. Please sit down. Wow. Wow. Get them under control. Please sit down. Please sit down. I got a lot of stuff to share with you. Let's not use up any more daylight than we have. Besides this rain coming in.
No, not with us. Sorry. It's clean away.
I am so delighted to be with you. You are amongst the elite in America and Canada, even the world today. You are in the top 10%. And that's why it's because you're here. Only the top 10%, maybe the top 5, maybe the top 1% of human beings in the world would ever make this trek all the way to Aspen just to learn how to become better in the future. I mean, that's phenomenal. Give yourselves a big hand. Congratulations. You're the best. And I want to give you the very best ideas I possibly can in the time that we have together here. But let me begin by saying, and Michael Gerber was talking about this, we're living at the very best time in all of human history. I am an economist by avocation. I read, I keep current with what's going on in the world. I've traveled in 90 countries, and I can tell you that North America today is the most booming single place in the world today. There are more opportunities, more possibilities for more people today than have ever existed in any other country at any other time in human history. And you are at the front of the line to take advantage of them. Yes. And our job today, our job in this conference is to give you ideas that you can use to take full advantage of this. More people are going to make more money in the years ahead than have been made in all of human history. I just read an article before I came down here by Brian Westbury. He's an economist I had dinner with in Chicago in April. And Brian Westbury is what you might call an optimistic economist, very smart. And he said that we are in what is called the long boom. Now, people talk about business cycles going up and down. If things go up, they have to go down and so on. That's not necessarily true. Business cycles are caused by mistakes of government. The primary mistake they make is they raise taxes. If they raise taxes or they interfere with business, the flow of business, what will happen is the economy will spike. And that's why you have to be very careful who you vote for next time. Because if they say they're going to raise your taxes, that means it means you're going to cause the economy to spike. What Brian Westbury says is that we're in the 87th month of a long boom. Do you know that Britain, Britain, for example, and several other countries have been 157, 168, 195 months of continuous boom, that the boom goes on year after year after year. This idea that it's all coming to an end and we must run and put our heads in a hole, not true. This is a great time. And this boom can continue and can continue and can continue. And your job is to take advantage of it. How many people here would like to double their income? If I can show you how, will you give it a try? Yes. Well, that's the only test question of the day. Do you know how many times the average person tries on a new goal before they give up? Well, the average is less than one. Most people give up before they even try the first time. Interesting, I've studied success, and I'll come back to this in a second. What I find is there's four things that people want. All human beings worldwide, and I've spoken all over the world, all want four things. Number one is they want to be healthy and live a long life. Number two is they want to do work that they enjoy, do it well, and get paid well for it. Isn't that true? And number three is they want to have wonderful relationships with people that they love and care about, who love and care about them. And that's probably more important than anything else. And number four, everybody wants to achieve financial independence. We want to make enough money so that we never have to worry about money again. Isn't that true? So we're all setting these as goals. We're all continually saying, what are my goals? It's always one of these three things. I always ask people what their goals are, and I can always tell you what your goals are. The same thing. You want to be happy, you want to be healthy, you want to make a lot of money, you want to be financially independent. And then, but before anybody starts, they say, well, before I start, that's what I want, I need to take a quick vacation to a wonderful vacation place called Someday Isle. And most people, the 80-20 rule, 80% of the population lives on Someday Isle most of their lives. Someday I'll lose weight, and someday I'll start a business, and someday I'll read that book or take that course, or someday I'll get out of debt, or someday I'll get out of this lousy relationship, or Someday Isle. And they live on Someday Isle. And who are they surrounded with on Someday Isle? Other people on Someday Isle. And what is the primary source of recreation on Someday Isle? It's swapping excuses. What's your excuse for not doing what you want to do? Well, my mother didn't love me as much as she loved my sister, and my father was unkind, and my first job sucked, and my boss is a bitch, and wah, wah, wah. So it's like a child's nursery in a hospital on Someday Isle. They'll still go wah, 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 all their problems. I've got to tell you a quick story about Someday Isle. I was invited to speak, it was in Nashville, I was invited to speak to a large national organization, franchise organization, and because I was the keynote speaker, they put me at the head table, and they put me at the head table with a couple, and let's just call them Harry and Susan. And they told me their story. These were two of the most respected franchise owners within this national organization. And they told me this interesting story, and I never forgot it. It was just one of those stories that just like imprints on your mind. They said, when they got out of high school, they had very little going for them. They'd graduated from high school. He waited a year or two. They were childhood sweethearts. They got married. They're in their 20s. They got a little house, and they got a child and a second child. And they're trucking along, and they're 25, 30 years old. And he's working as a plumber, and she's working in the supermarket. And they have too much month at the end of the money, and they worry about money all the time. And they drive a couple of old cars, and they recycle their kids' clothes and repair bicycles for their kids. That we all come from that. Anyway, but they didn't worry, they said. They had no worries because they knew that when Aunt Martha died, they'd be rich. Because they had an Aunt Martha. True story. They had an Aunt Martha, and Aunt Martha was wealthy. She had a beautiful home, and at one time she had taken them aside, and she'd said, you know, you have lots of brothers and sisters and so on, but of all the family, you're my favorites. And when I die, I'm leaving everything to you. And so they used to sit at home and they'd speculate about what they would do when Aunt Martha died. Now, they didn't want Aunt Martha to die. She was a wonderful woman. But she was in her 60s now. People don't live forever. You know, you never know what could happen. But they had her over for Sunday dinner, and they took her presents, and they took her on the little family vacations they had. They took wonderful care of Aunt Martha because, after all, they were her favorites, and they were going to get all the money when she died. Anyway, when they're about 35 years old, they're still financially in difficulties. They're sitting there at the kitchen table, and Susan, women are more practical about this, says to Harry, said, Harry, what if Aunt Martha lives another 20 years? We're in our 30s. Our kids are now growing up. They're 10, 12 years old. What if Aunt Martha lives another 20 years? She's 68, but she's got good health in her family, good genes. We would have waited all our life for Aunt Martha to die. We'd have lived in this condition all of our life. And it was a real shock. It's called in psychology a significant emotional event. It's like a thunderclap went off, and they realized, and they began to think, we've got to do something different. Well, as it happens, a friend of his at work was working with a janitorial franchise. And he said, would you help me in the evenings and weekends? So he said, sure. So he began to work with them evenings and weekends to make a little extra money. He turned out to have a natural faculty or facility for running cleaning crews, and they did a lot of commercial cleaning. And after about 6 months, he said, you should have your own franchise. He said, well, I don't know anything about our franchise. He said, well, the company will set you up. They'll train you how to do it. And he said, well, I don't have any money. He said, well, they'll advance you some money. I'll lend you some money. I'll help you get started. So they borrowed some money, put it together, bought a cleaning franchise, and got the kids to help, and Susan did the books, and it was very successful. And the company called them after a year and said, why don't you buy another franchise? And they hadn't thought about that, so they bought another franchise. And he was still working at his day job, and he bought another franchise, and he finally left his day job and bought another. Over the next 12 years, he bought a franchise every single year. By the end of 12 years, he had about 150 people working for him. He was worth several $1 million. They had a beautiful home. The kids were in the best colleges. They had solved all their financial problems. They were the most financially successful people in their whole social circle. And they were about 45 about this time, 45, 48. And then they got the news. Aunt Martha had died. Well, they were very sad about that. They went to the funeral with all the other family members, but the other family members didn't seem to be too upset about her having passed away. As a matter of fact, they seemed downright cheerful at the funeral. And so, you know where I'm going now. So the lawyer called them all together. The whole family got together, all the couples. They're all now in their 40s and 50s. They'd all were grown up with children, were grown up and so on. And the lawyer opened up the will and read the will, and Aunt Martha had died broke. In fact, she'd been broke for years. She'd been living off loans. She'd mortgaged and hypothecated her home and borrowed against it. She'd been living off her family. She hadn't had any money for years and years. And they turned around and they found that members of the family were shocked. They were all shocked. They were standing around shocking like victims of a bomb blast. Well, what happened? Well, Aunt Martha had told each of them privately that they were her favorites. And when she died, they were going to leave all their money. She was going to leave all her money to them. And here they were all standing there. This couple was financially independent because they'd taken the reins of life in their hands. The others were shocked. They were in their 40s and 50s. Their life had largely passed, and while they waited for Aunt Martha to die. Now, the reason I tell you the story is, first of all, it's true. It was a real shocker for them. It was the turning point in their lives. But my question is this, what is your Aunt Martha? What is your Aunt Martha? What are you waiting for to happen before you go for it? Because we all have something. We all have a mental block or a break of some kind. And you have to keep asking, what is your Aunt Martha that keeps you on the island? And it's always an excuse of some kind. So I'm going to give you the first great rule for success. Are you ready? Vote yourself off the island. No more excuses. Do it or don't do it. Get on with it. Follow what Harv teaches you and get on with it. Ready, aim, ready, fire, fire, fire. Is that what Harv says? Is get on with it. Don't let anything hold you back. By the way, a couple of people come up here this morning and said they wanted to write a book. How many people here want to write a book? Well, I write a lot of books, and I'll show you how to write a book. You go to my website. It's called briantracy.com. Click on free newsletters. It'll say how to write a book. And it's exactly how I write 4 books a year and have them published by major publishers. I'm now in 36 languages in 52 countries. And so you just go there, click it down, and it shows you literally a menu, not a menu, a recipe for writing a book. And I've given this to countless people who've been struggling with books for weeks, months, years, and within 90 days they've got a book out ready to go to the publisher. And that's no extra charge. Okay. No. Now, when I started my career, I started off quite humbly. I did not graduate from high school. As many of you know, I finished in the half of the class that makes the top half possible. I left high school without graduating, and I worked at laboring jobs for several years. And I could stretch the story out, but I'll just tell you, after several years of laboring, when I could no longer get a laboring job, like many of you, I got into sales. Yeah. And when I got into sales, and by the way, sales is the ultimate default profession. Nobody goes into sales. We default into sales when nothing else works. How do you get into sales? It's like backing up in a car and hitting something in the night. Whoomp. You don't see what it is, and it's a sales job. Yeah. Often it's your own new business, you know. Maybe I'll start a business. Whoop. It's a default. Anyway, so I got into sales, and I was not afraid to work because at least it was clean work. And I threw myself like a dog at a passing car, and I'd go out and knock on doors. They said, you know, just sales is not really a sales game. It's a rejection game. The more you get rejected, the more sales you make. So I would go out starting early in the morning, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd knock on doors. I used to run from place to place so I could be rejected more often, faster. They said, keep track of your calls. I kept track of my calls. One month I made 504 calls and no sales, but boy, did I see a lot of people. And I did this for month after month, and every so often I would stumble into a sale where the person had decided to buy my product and hadn't decided to where to buy it from, and they bought it from me. They felt pity on me. So I was just staying alive. And then I went and I asked one of the top guy in our company. He was making 10 times as much as anybody else. And he would roll in. I'd start off at 7 in the morning. I'd work till 9 o'clock at night, knocking on doors in the neighborhoods. He'd roll in at 9 o'clock in the morning. Customer would roll in, or a prospect. They'd have a little conversation. Prospect would sign a check. He'd make a sale. He'd go out and make a couple of sales in the morning, have lunch with another prospect, make sales in the afternoon. He was making more than anybody else in the company. He was making more by himself than everybody else put together. And so finally, I went to him and I said, what are you doing differently from me? And he told me. And this is one of the great breakthroughs in life. If you ever want to do anything, find out somebody who's doing it well and go and ask them what they're doing. Don't try to figure it all out for yourself. And so I asked him, what are you doing differently from me? And he said, well, show me your sales presentation and I'll critique it for you. I said, my what? Well, you're president. I said, you show me yours and I'll show you mine. I said, by the way, how do you define a sales presentation? He said, well, a sales presentation is a logical and orderly process of, first of all, identifying prospects and then establishing rapport with them and then identifying their needs and then presenting our product or service as the best choice, all things considered, answering their concerns and objections, closing the sale, and then getting resales and referrals, which loops you back into the top of the process. I was writing, I couldn't believe it. You mean there's a logical order to this? I was doing what most salespeople do when they start off. It's called the blah, blah sell. Blah, 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 blah. You find a prospect, try to get between them and the door, and they go blah, 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 and say as many clever things as you can. And if they start to lose interest, you speak louder and faster. Now, I didn't mind if they seemed to be losing interest. When they looked at their watch and started pounding it, then I started to become nervous. Well, no, he said, no, that's not how you sell at all. First of all, you determine that the person has a genuine need that your product or service can satisfy. And by asking questions to uncover the need. And if there is no need, then you carry on. You don't. So I just opened my eyes. I couldn't believe it. I learned later that he'd been trained by a Fortune 500 company when he left college. They had taken him and spent a year, 6 months in classroom, 6 months in the field, alternating back and forth like a windshield wiper until he was thoroughly trained in how to sell. He could then go into any sales organization, any product, service company, any industry, and within 30, 60, 90 days, he'd be selling 10 times as much as anyone else. I almost died and gone to heaven. And he said to me, by the way, he said, did you know that 20% of the salespeople make 80% of the money? I said, no, I'd never heard about that. And so I said, well, if that's true, then I want to be in the top 20%. That was a life changer for me. For the rest of my life, I look back and I realized it was making the decision to be in the top 20% that changed the direction of my life. And this is what I also learned. To get into the top 20%, the key is to make a decision. Just make a decision. So I made the decision, and I began asking, why is it that some salespeople are more successful than others? And I began to study successful selling. I became voracious. I used to study hour after hour. I wasn't married at the time, so I had lots of time on my own because I couldn't afford to take anybody out. So I'd get up early in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd study, and I'd go out in the daytime and practice what I learned. In the evening, I'd review it. And I began to read books and listen to audio programs and go to courses, and I began to practice it. And I did something else which changed my life as well. I find that there's two types of people in life. There's people who do things and people who talk about doing things. And one of the keys to success is action orientation. All successful people are like yourself. They're intensely action-oriented. Most people talk about what they're going to do, but then they go to the island. You know, you heard the old saying about the guy who says, I wake up every morning at this crack of dawn full of vigor and energy, and then I force myself to lay there until the feeling passes. Well, a lot of people do the same thing, is they have all these great ideas and they force themselves to do nothing until the feeling passes. Because what we have found is that there's a direct relationship between how quickly you take action on a new idea and how likely it is that you'll ever take action on any idea at all. In the work that I've done over the years, I found that all successful people have successful habits, and all unsuccessful people don't have them, or even worse, they have failure habits. They have habits that lead to failure. And so one of the most important habits that you can develop is the habit of taking action. And fortunately, if you do something repeatedly over and over again, what do you develop? You develop a habit. Now, the interesting thing is, forming a habit is difficult. Goethe, the German philosopher, once said, everything is hard before it's easy. Just like Michael was talking about learning to play a trumpet and learning to be a drywaller and carpenter and so on. Everything is hard before it's easy, but once you have made it a habit, it's like brushing your teeth. It's automatic and easy, and you can do it for the rest of your life. Well, what I found was everything that I tried for the first time didn't work. And my first idea was to be discouraged, say, oh, darn. And then I realized nothing works the first time. Nothing works the first time. Sometimes you have to practice it over and over again. Does anybody here have a favorite recipe? Okay, if you have a favorite dish that you make at home, sometime you tasted the dish at a friend's house or a restaurant and you said, you know, I like to be able to make that at home so I don't have to go somewhere else to have it. And so the first thing you ask for the recipe. And you take the recipe home and you take all the ingredients and you lay them out and you put it all together and then you mix it up. And how does it taste the first time? Not like you remember it. But you have something that is a great advantage, and that's the great advantage of being part of this organization. You have what is called positive knowing, not positive wishing, positive hoping, positive thinking, not fantasizing. You have positive knowing because you've tasted this dish. You know this dish can taste good. So you don't quit. You're not discouraged. You realize, it's obviously I haven't mixed the ingredients properly, so you go back and you mix it again. And the second time is not quite as bad. The third time, tasting pretty good. Fourth time, fifth time, you may have to do it several times. But at a certain point, bing, you've got it. Now you can walk into any kitchen, you can whip that dish up, and it tastes delicious every time. Isn't that true? Now, if you understand this is the same formula for making sales. It's the same formula for making money. I have a good friend, interesting, everybody wants to make a lot of money. He went bankrupt, and way beyond bankrupt. He ended up living at home with his family. He's 35 years old, made several $1 million, but he went bankrupt. So he read all about how you could buy homes for little or no money down, fix them up, and either rent them out or resell them, refinance them, and do it again. So he read a couple of books, took a couple of courses, listened to some programs, and he did exactly what they said. He followed the recipe. You have to look at 100 houses before you find 10. Out of the 10, you'll get offers that you can put in on 3, and you'll end up buying 1. It's 100 to 1 for the first house that you buy because it's a learning process. It's like the recipe. So he did that. The second house, he had to look at 50 houses. Third house, he had to look at 25. Fourth house, he had to look at 10, and so on. It took him 6 months to buy his first house. It took him 3 months to buy his second house. It took him a month to buy his fourth house. He said his goal was to buy 100 houses. And he just went to work, and he worked for 3 years, and he told me, he said, I didn't make it. I didn't make my goal. And he said, I didn't make 100 houses. He did, but I did buy 66. And financed them all out, and either rented them, resold them, rented them out, and then I put them all in a package and sold them for $3.5 million cash and went on to my next business venture. He said the first one was very hard. Second one was a little bit easier. Third one was a little bit easier. Now, what I'm telling you there is a very simple formula. It's called the buy 'em, fix 'em formula. Everybody who's ever tried the formula has gotten rich, as long as you have the persistence to realize it doesn't work the first time. Are you with me so far? And it may not be your thing. Remember, if a way of making money doesn't kind of grab you, if it doesn't kind of interest you, if you're not excited by it, then don't do it because it's wrong for you. In any business venture, any way of achieving financial success, any new business has to be something that grabs you. You have to kind of like it. You have to be excited about it because you need that excitement and drive to keep overcoming all the adversity that you have. It's kind of the engine that drives you forward. If you do it just for the money, you'll quit as soon as you experience any difficulties or or obstacles. Anyway, so it's possible once you learn the recipe, and this is the reason why people succeed greatly. This is why some people make 10 times as much as others in selling. They sell the same product out of the same office to the same people at the same price under the same conditions. They make 10 times as much. Why? Is they've mastered the recipe. And by the way, this isn't a theory. This has been validated in leading university studies. Top consulting firms go into companies. They identify what are the correct formulas. They implement the formulas worldwide, and the companies become multi-jillion-dollar companies over and over again. So it's possible to learn this. Well, what I learned asking this question, why are some people more successful than others, I found that there were principles behind success. And going back to the 80-20 rule I talked about, is the 80-20 rule, in my estimation, says that 80% of your success is psychological. It's mental. It's what's going on in your mind rather than what's going on outside you. The other 20% is technical. Now, some people say that all you have to do is roll your eyeballs and think happy thoughts and you'll be rich. Anybody who tells you that needs a checkup from the neck up. Because that's not true, because the 20% of it is technical. If you sit there with a bunch of ingredients in the kitchen, you can't think happy thoughts, and it's all going to come out of the oven well prepared. You have to learn the recipes and the formulas. You have to master the skills. You have to suffer adversities and difficulties. You have to get feedback and so on and so forth. But if you will learn those skills, the rest of it, the 80% is mental. So I began to study the metaphysics. My friend Mark Victor Hansen is here today. Mark introduced me to some metaphysics 23, 24 years ago. I was telling him that yesterday. And it had a profound effect on my life, because what I learned is that behind everything that happens in the real world, there is a metaphysical or a spiritual significance or connotation. And what I began to find as I read hundreds and hundreds of books is that there are certain laws that have been discovered and rediscovered throughout all of human history. And I want to share with you the seven of the most important laws. In my other works, there's as many as 32 laws that I've discovered, all of which are important. Someone talked earlier about Harv talked about the law of reciprocation. It's a very, very important law, both on a physical level and on a spiritual and psychological level. But I want to share with you some of the ideas that had a profound effect on my life and the life of others, because I keep getting letters from all over the world in a variety of languages, most of which I can't read, but some of which I can, talking about how these principles have so profoundly changed people's lives. And the first law I learned in selling was the law of cause and effect. What I learned is that for every effect in your life, there's a cause. Is that nothing in our life happens by accident. Everything happens for a reason. And even if we don't know the reason, there are specific reasons behind it. If a dish tastes delicious, we don't say it's a miracle, or some clouds have parted, or but the person who did it has some genetic, incredible, marvelous form. No, they just got a recipe and they mastered the recipe. In science, there is a principle with regard to a scientific formula. If we say this is a scientific formula or this is scientific, what does it mean? And in science, the word that they use is replicability. I found that, one of those little factoids. It's replicable. It means that the formula could have been discovered by geniuses, but it can now be successfully used by morons. Now, this is really important, and Michael was talking about that, and Harvest talked about that, is it takes tremendous, difficult efforts, years, even centuries, to develop successful formulas. But once they're developed, they can be used by ordinary people to get extraordinary results, if you learn the formulas. So, the law of cause and effect says that for every effect in your life, there's a cause. If the effect that you want is to double your income, then it's quite simple. Then you may say, that's the effect that I want. Then you ask, who else is earning twice as much as me? Because everybody who's earning twice as much as you today was at one time earning half as much as you. So then you go and you find out by asking them or reading their material or coming to their courses, what did you do to get there? We say that success leaves tracks. You find out what they did, how they put the recipe together to be successful, and then you follow the recipe. And you follow it over. Don't deviate from the recipe until you've mastered the recipe. And if you follow the recipe, you get to the same destination. So here's one of the great success principles. First success principle, vote yourself off the island. Second one is this, is if you do what other successful people do over and over again, you must inevitably get the results that they get. And if you don't, you won't. It's real simple. And the world is full of people who are doing what failures do, and they can't understand why they're not getting the results that successful people get. By the way, there's an awful lot of stuff about the economy. Many Americans, almost the majority, think that the U.S. is in recession. The reason they think the U.S. is in recession is because the newspapers are very, very biased, and they know the very best way to bring about governmental change at high levels is to make the people feel insecure and uneasy with the economy. The fact is, the American economy is the best it's ever been in history. Do we have problems? Yes. Do we have too many entitlements? Yes. Do we have too much government debt? Yes. But in terms of opportunities and possibilities, it's never been better in the history of the world. Why do you think we got millions of people coming here legally and illegally? To be unemployed and go on welfare? No, because there's so many jobs. We create in America 22 million new jobs a year. We create in 1 year more than Europe has produced in the last 30 years in terms of new jobs. It's absolutely phenomenal what goes on in this country. Anyway, I won't get into politics. The problem with politics is the word politics. It comes from the Greek. Poly means many, and ticks means voracious bloodsuckers. So cause and effect says that if you'll do what other successful people do, you eventually get the same result. The point that I was going to make is that if you're going to read or take information from people on the economy, look at people who are successful and taking full advantage of what's going on. Don't read people who are losers, who are broke, who are political, who are on welfare, who are weeping and whining and crying because they have a different agenda. Listen to positive, constructive people with great ideas for the future, not the other people. And you can always choose. Anyway, so the law of cause and effect says that thoughts are causes and conditions are effects. And this is the greatest discovery in all of human history is thoughts are causes and conditions are effects. Is your thoughts create the conditions of your life. In the Old Testament, it calls about the law of sowing and reaping. Whatsoever a man soweth, so also shall he reap. And let me point out, the Bible is not an agricultural textbook. Okay? It's a textbook for the development of the soul. And whatsoever a man soweth in his mind, he reaps in reality, or a woman for that matter. Newton, the great physicist, changed the whole world with this whole idea of action and reaction. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. In other words, whatever you put in, you get out. And you can't get out without putting in. Our greatest problem, by the way, in modern life, not only in America and worldwide, is an enormous number of people want to get out without putting in. They want to become wealthy without making any contribution. They want to have money without creating any value. And there's lots of people out there to take advantage of them and tell them that it's possible to do that. But it'd be the same as going to the field and saying, I want a crop, but I don't want to put in any seed. Or I want to put in a couple of seeds and I want a full crop. The fact is that the universe has a law, and the granddaddy law of the universe is cause and effect, sowing and reaping, action and reaction. Well, that's the first law. In other words, if you want to be financially successful, find out what other financially successful people do and do the same thing over and over again until it becomes a habit, and then you'll enjoy financial success. And it's not a matter of accident, and it doesn't matter if you went to the best schools or the worst schools or no schools. It's just a matter of law. And if you get your life in harmony with the laws, everything changes. If you get your life in conflict with the laws, nothing will happen to you except for bad things. Well, the second law that I discovered is called the law of control. And the law of control is very interesting because psychologists have written hundreds, thousands of books and articles on this. It says that we feel happy to the degree to which we feel we are in control of our own lives. And we feel unhappy or stressed to the degree to which we feel we are not in control or out of control, or even worse, controlled by external circumstances. Now, what psychologists call this is the locus or place of control. So they ask you, where do you feel the control lies in your life? Are you in charge of your life? Or is it your boss? Is it your bills? Is it your health? Is it your family? It's your situation that's controlling you. To the degree to which you feel you are in control, you're in command of your life, you feel happy, you feel powerful, you have high self-esteem, you have more energy, you have a stronger immune system, and so on. Now, the reason I mention this is that each of us has areas of our lives where we feel totally in control. Have you ever gone home from a holiday, like you go home from this vacation, you walk in the door of your own place, you walk in the door, and you feel a great sense of relief. Why? It's because you're totally in control in your own environment. You're no longer on planes and trains and automobiles and everything else. You walk home and you're in control. So you have to ask yourself, where are the stress points in your life? And the stress points are points where you feel that you're controlled by external circumstances. One of the two worst things of all is we can be in a bad relationship. And so our mental health is controlled by the behavior of another person. 85% of our problems in life, by the way, come with hair on top and talk back. You know what I'm talking about. The other 15% are material. So another source of loss of control is financial. We feel out of control financially because we owe too much, we have too little, we have too much month at the end of the money, and so on. So you have to ask yourself, and here's what we found. We found there's always a way that you can be free. There's always a way you can retake control in your life. And the two ways are, number one is just take control, make a decision, and get on with it. And number two is to walk away. Does anybody know what I'm talking about here? Everybody in life does this regularly. We either decide to get in and resolve the situation, or we decide to walk away. But either case, we feel a tremendous sense of relief because we are back in control. That's really important. So that's the second law. And the law of control, wonderfully enough, is completely in harmony with the law of cause and effect. Because the law of control says that we control our own lives by the things that we do. The next law is what I call the law of belief. The law of belief says that whatever you believe with conviction becomes your reality. Is you don't see the world the way it is, you see the world the way you are. You see it through a screen of your own beliefs. And so we discussed this, and going right back into prehistory. In the Old Testament, it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. In other words, his deep beliefs. In the New Testament, it says, according to your faith, it is done unto you. What he was talking about this morning, which is so important. And William James of Harvard said, belief creates the actual fact. Because if you believe something strongly enough, you will take action on that belief. If you believe something strong enough, it becomes your reality. So imagine this, two things. Imagine that there was a store that you could go to buy beliefs, just like a computer store where you'd buy a computer program that you could put into your hard drive. And you could buy any belief on the shelves. Which would be the very best belief for you to buy? Well, looking at the biographies and autobiographies of hundreds of successful people, we find there is one belief that all successful people have in common. And it is the belief that, by gum, I'm going to be a great success. By gum, everything that happens is part of a great process. It's like W. Clement Stone used to say that whenever anything went wrong, that's good. It's all part of a process. So when you absolutely believe that you're going to be successful, no matter what happens to you, you'll see it as part of the process. No matter how many setbacks you'll see it as part of the process of being successful. Now, if you have influence over other people, the most wonderful thing you can do is tell them that you believe that they're going to be successful. I have 4 wonderful children, and I learned this before I had my first child. So I've been practicing it on my kids, because kids are completely amenable to input when they're young. So from the time they were little, I've told them, when you grow up, you're going to be a big success. When you grow up, you're going to be a big success. I slip into the back of their computer, their mental computer, and I just program it in. You're going to be a big success. You're going to be a big success. As I got a little bit older, they said, well, how am I going to be a success, Daddy? I don't know what I'm going to do. Don't worry. Whatever you do, you'll be a big success. Well, what if it doesn't work out? I said, if it doesn't work out, that means it's something else is where you'll be a big success. And so my kids grow up, and that's all they ever hear. You're going to be a big success. Now, my son David was a little bit shy when he was growing up. I used to tell him how he was going to be a big success. And I remember him talking to a friend of his when he was 12. And his friend says, what are you going to do when you grow up, David? He said, well, I don't know, but I'm going to be a big success. And I said, it worked. Damn, it worked. And that's really important that you tell it to yourself, that you absolutely believe that you're going to be a big success. By the way, going back just one click, with regard to locus of control, Americans have the highest locus of control per capita of any people in the history of the world. 68% of Americans believe that they are largely in control of their own lives. That is, by the way, true for probably 100% of people here. Everybody here believes that they are in charge of their own lives. They make things happen. They're not passive waiting for things to happen. They go out and make things happen. Isn't that right? Yeah. And that's really important, because that is the attitude that makes it a reality. Your belief creates the actual fact. Now, here's something else that I've learned. I've learned it from Harv and from Mark and from a lot of other people, is the greatest single obstacle to our success is our self-limiting beliefs, is we believe that we're limited in some way. Our friend this morning was talking about the fact that each person is a potential genius, that you have genius inside you, that you have unlimited potential, which is what we agree, we believe passionately. But if we believe that we are limited in some way, it becomes true for us. It becomes our belief. By the way, I didn't do well in school, and before we came here, I was going to do some background checking on the people here. And what I found is that there's a lot of people in this audience who didn't do well in school. Yes, there's a lot of people here got lousy grades in school. I was astonished to look at the high percentage. In fact, you could be sitting next to one of them right now. Yes, we know who you are. Now, here's the problem, is that if you're told, which I was, and all the time you're growing up, they say you have to get good grades or you won't do well in life. You have to get good grades or you won't get into college. You have to get good grades or you won't get a good job, won't get very well, and so on. They tell you that to encourage you to get good grades. So what if you got lousy grades for whatever reason? Well, now, you could be 25 or 35 years old and you don't even try. You don't even try because, hey, you didn't get good grades in school, so you're kind of short of potential. And what we do is we actually sabotage ourselves. We drive with our foot on the brake of our own potential because we think, well, I didn't really get good grades in school. And then you read the studies and you find that most of the people who got straight A's work for the people who got B's. And the people who got B's work for the people who got C's who own the companies. And the people who own the companies got the money from the venture capitalists, all who got D's in school. And so the grades that you got in school are irrelevant. But if you believe that because you got poor grades or because you didn't get started, you didn't go to college or something else, if you believe it, it becomes true for you. So the first thing you do is you have to challenge your self-limiting beliefs and realize that most self-limiting beliefs have no foundation in reality. How many times have you had an experience where you thought you had no skill or ability in some area, and then you started working in that area, and it turned out to be pretty capable, and you're quite amazed, and you never had that idea? The fact of the matter is, we all have that throughout life. My friend Dennis Waitley has this wonderful line. He said, you could not use all of your potential if you had 100 lifetimes. You have so much potential. And what holds us back from using all of our potential is we believe that we don't have it. I will never forget the story of this fellow's grandfather came out, homesteaded a piece of land in Alberta, passed it on to his grandfather, passed it on to his father. The father could never make a living on it. Finally passed on to the son. The son was on welfare and raising goats on this quarter section in Alberta. None of the family for 3 generations had ever made any money on this hard scrabble piece of farm. And along came an oil company. The oil company said, can we drill on your land? If we find oil, we'll sign an extraction agreement with you, royalties and so on. They drilled on his oil. They found an oil pool. And overnight, he was a millionaire. He had an income of something like $150,000, $200,000 a year for the next 30 years. He went from living a hard scrabble life, raising goats on this lousy piece of land, and somebody else came along and showed him how to get the potential out of the land. The oil had always been there. That's what this seminar does. That's what Harv does, by the way, is he shows you how to drill oil in your own land and tap into the potential that you have. That was always there. It's been there all this time. But your job is to drill. That's really important. And that's what we're here for 3 days, is to look for insights. So remember this. Always ask yourself, you have a self-limiting belief. What if it wasn't true? What if it wasn't true? My son, going back to David, David was really shy when he was growing up. And so I would say, one thing I know about you, David, is you're not afraid of anything. He said, I'm afraid of everything. He's afraid of riding a bicycle, and he's afraid of this. He's afraid of ghosts in the night. No, David, you're not afraid of anything. And I say to Barbara, one thing I know about David, he's not afraid of anything. And he said, yes, I am. We drive along. I say, well, I really admire David because he's not afraid of anything. And I would just say this. And I changed his name to Dave the Brave. And then I shortened it to LeBrave. I say, where's LeBrave? Where's LeBrave? Where is he? How are you doing, LeBrave? I called him that. I started calling him Dave the Brave all the time. And, at a certain point in his life, he started saying, something, I'm not afraid of anything. It changed his whole life. You reprogrammed him to tell him, because other than that, he had a self-limiting belief. And it's really important. Anyway, so your beliefs are important, and your whole attitude toward life is determined by your beliefs. And here's the interesting thing. You come into the world with no beliefs. Every belief that you have, good or bad, you learned from childhood. And most of your self-limiting beliefs, if not all of them, have no basis in reality. Is you have the capacity to do anything, be anything that you want. You could learn any subject. You could become a doctorate in any university. You could memorize, then learn languages. And the more you learn, the more you can learn. The more you use your brain, the more your brain is capable of learning more things. But what holds us back is, I could never learn languages. Shut up. You could learn languages. I'll tell you what, you went to a foreign country, and the only way you could eat is to learn the language and the words for the food. You'd learn languages at a speed of summer lightning. I know, because I've been there. In other words, the self-limiting beliefs have no reality. So the belief that you have programmed in, put in your computer, is that you are going to be a big success in life. And everything that happens is part of this great process. Now, the next law is called the law of expectations. Again, there's libraries of books and years of research on this. Expectations theory, by the way, is the foundation of all economics. It determines the drift of stock markets, the movement of world finances. It determines the investment. Entrepreneurs have high expectations that their entrepreneurial efforts are going to work. We would not start a business without high positive expectations. So expectations have an enormous impact on our attitudes. And here's the interesting thing, is if you believe you're going to be a great success, you expect everything that happens to be part of the great plan. So if you have positive expectations, like a kid's first Christmas, you're positive all the time. And the key to being positive is to look for the good. Expect good things to happen. We say that whatever you expect with confidence becomes your own self-fulfilling prophecy. Is you are constantly predicting your future by talking about how the way you think things are going to turn out. For example, two types of people could come to this conference. One could say, this is going to be a great conference. We're going to have speakers up there, and much of what they say I've heard before or will not be relevant to me, but each speaker is going to have something that's going to be so powerful it could change my life. And you're sitting here leaning forward, waiting for it. You don't know when it's coming in the time that we have, but you're waiting for it, and your whole attitude is different than a person who says, all right, I'll go with you. Yeah. But, it's going to be sitting in the hot sun, geez, drinking cheap beer. That kind of same experience, but different expectations. A person who starts a new job and thinks this is the start of a new career is a person who's very different than saying, well, it's just a job, from 9 to 5. Now, the interesting thing is 3 sets of expectations. We could talk about this all day. First of all, the expectations that your parents had of you have an enormous impact on the person you become. And I knew this when I first started to have children because my parents' expectations of me were negative. They were always critical, always demanding, always negative. No matter what you did, it was never good enough. If you did do anything, it was... Does anybody know what I'm talking about here? So I said to myself, well, I am not going to let my experience affect my experience with my children. By gum, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to do with my children. This is what we all resolve to do. I'm going to do with my children exactly the opposite of what my parents did to me. So in the work that was done at Harvard, what they found is that there's 2 keys to raising happy, healthy children. One is positive expectations, which is the parents just basically say, I believe in you. I believe you're going to be a great success. I believe you're going to do well. I believe that you're going to have a great life. And they say, yes, but I got poor grades. And, well, that's not typical of your true performance. You can get better grades next time. And they just kind of keep showering their children like ladling syrup on pancakes. They just keep ladling this syrup of positive expectations on their kids. And what psychologists have found is people rise to the expectations put on them by the people they admire. The higher up a person is in a person's idea, like a parent or an uncle or an aunt, the greater impact their expectations have. The expectations of teachers on students. If teachers treat students like they're really smart, there's years of this called the Pygmalion effect. They'll tell teachers and they'll treat this entire class like they're all Nobel Prize potential winners. And the teachers will treat this class like they're all brilliant, and these kids will just flower. It's been proven over and over again, even though they don't know the IQs. The same thing is with your kids. Same thing is with your spouse. If you're always expecting the best of your spouse, that is the most wonderful, most loving, most life-enhancing thing you can do, is to always expect the best of the members of your family, as opposed to dumping on them or getting mad at them or criticizing them and so on. And so the expectations your parents had of you, and you have to ask, what were they? Because if you're not clear about them, it's hard to free yourself of them. The second is the expectations you have of the people who look up to you. But the third is the expectations you have of yourself. And you should expect the very best of yourself. You should expect to learn something from every experience. You should expect to continue to grow. You should expect to be a big success and be happy and healthy and thin and debt-free and retire with lots of money in the bank. You should expect to learn something from everything that happens. You should just have this confident expectation. W. Clement Stone had this wonderful concept where he talked about being an inverse paranoid. And an inverse paranoid, a paranoid is a person who believes that everybody's out to get him. It's a vast conspiracy. An inverse paranoid is the reverse. He believes that everything out there is part of a vast conspiracy to make you happy and successful. And so whatever happens, he would look at it and say, that's good, and I wonder what it is that I can turn to my benefit to be happy and successful. And as a result, he became one of the richest, most successful people in history, starting off as a penniless orphan boy selling papers on the streets of Chicago at the age of 12 because of this attitude. So expectations are very important. The next law is called the law of attraction. Now, the law of attraction is very popular right now. I'm going to come back to it in just a second because it's very popular. All right. The law of attraction says that you are a living magnet. It says that your thoughts, and the law of attraction is tied into 2 or 3 other laws. One is called the law of vibration, which says that your thoughts vibrate at a certain level of energy, and that they attract into your life other thoughts, people, circumstances vibrating at the same level of energy. There's also another law called the law of sympathetic resonance. The law of sympathetic resonance also explains why we're here. It says that if you took 2 pianos on the sides of a large room and you went and you hit the note of C flat on one piano and walked across the room, the note of C flat on the other piano would be vibrating in perfect harmony with the piano that you just hit. This is why very often you'll walk into a room and you'll strike it off with the person on the other side of the room. You'll have this sympathetic resonance. You get married, settle down for the rest of your life. You ever had that experience? Most amazing darn thing is we will walk into a room, we'll see a person, and there will just be that we'll be vibrating at exactly the same level. And it'll turn out that we're exactly the right people for each other. And we'll say it was kind of magical. And we could talk about this a lot because it's a neat thing. Also, you will have a time when you'll meet somebody and the vibrations will be bad. And later on, you'll find out you were right, that that's not a good situation. Well, the law of attraction says that you invariably, because of this force field of energy, like an iron magnet attracts filings, you inevitably attract into your life people and circumstances in harmony with your dominant thoughts. But it's your dominant thoughts emotionalized. It's not just the thought itself, it's a thought charged with emotion. We say that thought has no power of itself, and emotion or energy has no direction. But a thought multiplied times an emotion equals a result. T times E equals R. Thought times emotion equals result. So if you have a very positive thought, or you have a very clear idea of financial success, multiplied by the emotion of intense desire, belief, confidence, happiness, that it's going to come true, positive expectation, it creates a result consistent with it. Laws, by the way, are like gravity. If you drop a rock, it goes boom. If you drop a glass, it shatters. Gravity is neutral. It doesn't matter what you drop. Laws have a two-edged sword. So you can have a thought that is emotionalized with a negative emotion, and you'll attract exactly that into your life. There are people who have negative thoughts and ideas about other people and other circumstances, and they continually draw negative events and circumstances into their life. We have all seen situations like this. I used to have a woman working for me who was so negative that when she went near the photocopy machine, it would quit. And it's true. I mean, her negative vibrations was literally, and they would bring out the repair people, brand new machine, nothing wrong with it. Just keep her away from it, because she was so negative. She would drive, she bought a brand new car. She had just gotten divorced, and she was very unhappy. She had bought a brand new car. She drove it half a block down the street from the dealership, and it burst into flames and consumed itself. And they went, they tore it all apart. There was not a single thing wrong with the car, except she was driving it. Anyway. Now here's an important point, and it's a trap that you have to avoid. And we see this in America. In America, one of the greatest emotions, and it's one of the most destructive of all negative emotions, is the combination of envy and resentment. Is almost all of our laws, our tax laws, our regulation laws, almost half the political body in America is driven by envy and resentment of those who are more successful. So it's very easy for us, if you read the papers, to be envious and resent other people who are successful. Then once you start to envy them, you start to see that they're evil or they're bad or they make too much money or they're oppressing or exploiting the poor and so on and so forth. So it's very easy, if we're not careful, for us to criticize successful people. Yet when you criticize successful people, you activate another law which comes under the law of attraction, which is the opposite, which would be what? Would be the law of repulsion. And the law of repulsion says if you criticize other successful people, you create an anti-magnetic force that drives success out of your life. So one of the things I teach my kids, one of the things I teach my friends, is always admire successful people. Look up to successful people. Don't fall into the trap saying, yeah, he's successful, but he's not happy, or she's successful, but she's overweight, or he's successful, but his life sucks, he's successful, but he's, No. Don't get into the trap of criticizing successful people. Admire them for their success, their hard work, their energy, their years of application, and so on, and be happy for their success. Always want for others what you want for yourself. Always want for others what you want for yourself. And when you see somebody who's worked hard and achieved success, you say, that's wonderful. Abraham Lincoln once says that some people become successful as proof that others may do it as well. And so that's the mindset of the superior person. The superior person admires successful people, and as a result, they set up this positive force field of energy that draws into their lives people, opportunity, and ideas to be successful as well. Again, America is the most successful country in the world because there's very little institutionalized class envy, except in Washington. Yeah. And in America, in most other countries where people are successful, they have to hide it. In Australia and New Zealand, they have what they call the tall poppy syndrome. If you go there for any time at all, they call it the tall poppy. People who are successful are called tall poppies, and the job of the newspapers is to cut down the tall poppies. So if you're successful, you kind of have to play. You have to keep your head down because it is a habit to attack successful people. Here, who's the most successful? Who's the successful American? Carlos Slim just passed him. Can you imagine that? Do you know how much stuff you have to steal in Mexico to become the richest person in the world? Unbelievable. But if you look at Bill Gates, he's our richest American, right? $54 billion. Everybody admires Bill Gates. Isn't that true? Have you ever heard anybody run him down? I mean, of our people? We don't run him. We are happy for his success because the fact that he's successful means it's possible for us as well. Now, we may not make as much money, but hey, what's 1 billion? $1 billion would be okay, right? 1 million would be okay. 1,000 would be okay for some of us. Anyway, my point is that the law of attraction is a two-edged sword, and you have to use it very carefully. And I'll come back to this in a second. The next law is called the law of correspondence. The law of correspondence says that your outer world is a mirror of your inner world, and that wherever you look, there you are. Is you live in a 180-degree mirror, and every part of your life reflects back to who you are. It's almost like what is inside yourself is reflected onto the screen. So you see this in your relationships. Instantaneously, when you change your thinking internally, your relationships automatically change. You see it in your health. You see it in your income. You see it in your wealth. You see it in your home, your car. Every part of your life is a reflection back to you of what is going on inside yourself. So if you're a very positive, happy, positive expectations, confident person who likes themselves and likes other people, you'll see this all around you. There's some people can walk into a room and people just feel it and they turn and smile. They're just happy that they're there. They can feel the vibration of a person who feels good about themselves. And other people can walk into a room and the lights will go out. People will immediately feel there's negative people. So the one thing that we can control is we can control what we're presenting to the world. We can control only one thing in the world, and it's our thinking. And the last law I want to share with you, and this is really important because it's almost a summary law. It's called the law of superconscious activity. And the law of superconscious activity says that any thought, plan, goal, or idea that you can hold continuously in your conscious mind must be brought into your reality by the superconscious. Now let me say this again because it is the greatest law of history. It summarizes all the great mental and spiritual principles ever discovered. Any thought, plan, goal, or idea that you can hold continuously, that's the test. Can you hold the idea in your conscious mind must be brought into your reality by your superconscious. Your superconscious will bring you ideas and insights. Your superconscious will attract people and resources. Your superconscious will solve every problem on the way to your goal. The superconscious will give you lessons that you need to achieve the goal and to hold on to the goal. Your superconscious will give you energy that drives you toward the goal. The most important thing of all is that the goal has to be clear. And this is the key. Now, people say, well, how do I make all these lessons work? Well, all these laws work. Well, it's very simple. You don't need to. All you need to do is have a very clear, specific goal. If you have a very clear, specific goal that you think about most of the time, what will happen is that all the laws will begin to work. So the summary of these 7 laws, which we talked about before, is that you become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. And if you think about a goal that is important to you most of the time, what triggers the law of cause and effect? You think about the goal, and everything in your life, that becomes the cause of the effects of your life. What gives you a sense of control? Very clear idea of your goal. What do you believe in? That you will ultimately achieve your goal. What do you confidently expect will happen? That you will. Everything that happens is moving you toward the goal. What do you attract into your life? People and resources in harmony with the goal. What is the law of correspondence? Your outer world mirrors back to you your goal. And by the law of superconscious activity, if you're absolutely clear about a goal and you think and talk about it all the time, everything in your world begins to work together and move you toward the goal and move the goal toward you. Now, I'm going through a lot of stuff in a short period of time, but Harv tells me you're some of the smartest people in America. Is that true? Did anybody not understand that? So I'm going to give you a very simple exercise, which I've given to you before. Before the end of the day, I want you to take a clean sheet of paper like this and write down 10 goals. That's all right. 10 goals that you'd like to accomplish in the next year. And just write down 10. And discipline yourself to write 10. And don't stop writing until you come down to 10. House, home, car, money, health, weight loss, whatever it likes, write down 10. Then you look at this goal and you imagine that you could wave a magic wand and you could have any one goal on this list within 24 hours. And whatever it is, you put a circle around that goal. You put a circle around that goal. And this becomes your major definite purpose. This becomes your primary organizing principle. This is what you think and talk about all the time. This becomes the goal that you focus on every single day. And every morning when you get up, you think about that goal. And all day long, you think about the goal. And as you think about this goal, more and more of your subconscious and superconscious powers are assigned to help achieve this goal. As you think about the goal, you start to get more ideas and insights that move you toward the goal. And more people and resources will come out of the woodwork to help you to achieve the goal. And as you think about the goal, you'll become more positive, you'll become more powerful, you'll have a greater sense of control, and you'll start to feel, slowly at first, you'll feel yourself moving toward the goal, and the goal starts to move toward you. And you start to see things you hadn't seen before. You start to attract people and ideas you hadn't seen before. You start to have insights you hadn't had before. And the critical test, all that is required of you is for you to think continuously about the one goal, the goal that can have the greatest positive impact on your life. And you think about it all the time. And you talk about it all the time. And the only question you ask is how? How am I going to achieve that goal? Say it, say how. From now on, whenever you decided on a major goal, the only question is how. Not whether, not I wish, not I hope, not I'll give it my best shot, I'll see what happens, wah, 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 before I go to the island for the weekend. What you do is you say no. The only question is how. Because every time you ask the question how, it's like stepping on the accelerator of your own imagination and you trigger ideas. How? And the ideas, every idea is for an action that you can take. And it's an action that you can take to move towards your goal. And every time you take that action, you move faster towards your goal. And we say that God answers prayer in the form of ideas for actions that you can take. And if you take action over and over again, what do you develop? You develop the habit of taking action all the time. And the faster you move towards your goal, the faster the goal moves towards you. My friend Mark says it really well. He said, whatever you want wants you. Isn't that right, Mark? It's a great line. Whatever you want wants you. And if you're absolutely clear about it, the test is, can you think about it most of the time? And if you'll do that, what will happen is you'll have a tremendous sense of control. You will align all the powerful mental laws like a harmonic convergence of planets, and every single power you have will be unleashed and move you toward that goal and move the goal toward you. Well, geez, the timing is great here. Now, I told you I'd say something about the law of attraction. So I'll just tell you this, and this is my conclusion, what I consider to be the real secret of success. And I've run this past a lot of people here and a lot of successful people, and they primarily agree. I believe that the law of attraction is necessary but not sufficient. In other words, it is a necessary part of success because it's a powerful law, but it is not enough in itself. Are you with me so far? So I was in Korea recently, and I began talking about this, which what triggered the idea. I said, when I left Los Angeles and wheels came up, the pilot came on and said, we'll be landing in Seoul at 5 minutes after 5 tomorrow afternoon. And then I was surprised to learn that for the entire flight, the plane was off course. The plane was off course 99% of the time. It was continually off course. So what are all the avionics in the plane? What are the pilot, co-pilot, and engineer? What are they there for? To get the plane back on course. Because the plane is off course with wind and shear and clouds and movement of the earth and gravitational forces and so on. Every plane is off course 99% of the time. Your life is off course 99% of the time. That's the way the world works. So here is the great secret of success. It's in 3 things. Number 1, be absolutely crystal clear about what you want as a goal. Write it down and make it measurable. Don't have wishes and hopes and fantasies and dreams and everything else. A goal that is not in writing is not a goal at all. It's what I call a cigarette smoke goal. You just blow it, it has no effect. But a goal that is in writing becomes something you can touch, taste, feel, fold, read, work on, and so on. So number 1 key to success is to have a very clear goal that you want to accomplish. Number 2 is take off. And this is the most important thing of all. That's what our Harv teaches you. That's what everybody here teaches you, is take off. In avionics, they have an expression called wheels up. They say the plane does not officially exist as a flight until wheels are up. At that point, it fits into the computer, the flight plans, and everything else. The most important thing you do in the world is you take the first step. You take the first step, and in taking the first step, as we said before, a leap of faith, but in taking the first step, suddenly everything starts to happen for you. You start to get feedback from your environment. You start to get ideas and input. You start to change course and so on. And the third key to success is keep making course corrections until you achieve your destination. Resolve in advance before you even start off that you will never quit. What I found is if you resolve in advance that this is my goal, this goal will change my life more than anything else, and by gum, I will never quit until I achieve that goal, you become a totally different person. The world is full of weak people who will try once or twice and then quit, but strong people never quit. Famous story, by the way, Federal Express, $60 billion company. Federal Express went through hell to get to the point where they were almost bankrupt. They could not make payroll. And Fred Smith, they finally told him, it's too late. We've done everything. We've borrowed every penny. We've exhausted every line of credit. We're finished. We can't make payroll. We have to shut the company down. Do you know what Fred Smith did? He took the last $25,000 that was in the company coffers. He translated it into cash. He caught the night flight to Las Vegas, and he sat at the card tables, and he played until he had enough money to make payroll. And he took a taxi back to the airport and went back and made payroll by the end of the month. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having the guts to do that, go all in with everything? That's the kind of person that never thinks about quitting. The reason you are great is because you never think about quitting. Isn't that right? Now, I have to tell you a quick story. Our biggest enemy of success in life, our biggest enemy is the path of least resistance. It's the tendency to do what is fun and easy rather than what is hard and necessary. So the story, Ole and Sven, they're up in Minnesota. They shoot a deer, and they're dragging the deer back to the truck by the tail, and they keep slipping and losing their grip and losing their balance. And a farmer comes along and says, boys, what are you doing? He says, well, you're dragging the deer back to the truck. He said, well, boys, you're not supposed to drag a deer by the tail. That's a very clumsy way to drag the deer. You're supposed to drag a deer by the handles that God has provided. They're called antlers. You're supposed to drag a deer by the antlers. They said, well, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much, sir. So they went around. They started dragging deer by the antlers. After 5 minutes, they're whipping along. Ole says to Sven, he said, the farmer was right. It'd go a lot easier by the antlers. He said, yeah, Ole, but we're getting further and further from the truck. And if you didn't understand that, someone will explain it to you later. The world is full of people who are dragging the easy way, but they're getting further and further from the truck of their own ambitions. They're not doing what is hard and disciplined and necessary. They're doing what is fun and easy, and they're going to have fun until their daddy takes their T-bird away. Now, let me just summarize by saying this. My time is up. By saying this, that we're living at the very best time in all of human history. And you are the very best people living at the very best time in the very best country in all of human history. And of everything that's been accomplished in the last 200 years of America, what's going to be accomplished in the years ahead will be greater than that. We're hockey sticking as an economy, and we're into basically the great wave of success. As Michael told you, more people will start more businesses and become millionaires in the years ahead than in all of history. And your job is to be at the front of the line. Your job is to take full advantage of this wonderful country that is available to us. So here are the three things. The real secret of success. Number one, decide exactly what you want. Set it as a goal. Write it down. Make a plan to accomplish it. Number two, take action on that goal and take action every day. And number three, keep making course corrections until you achieve the goal. And never give up. Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you.
All right, let's hear it for Brian Tracy.